Welcome to the DGD podcast. As always, the NCDGD himself, Robert Reynolds. As always, Juan Daniels. And with us, Turner from the Spike Squad. You know him, the Spike Squad. With that being said, we're going to have a lot to talk about. The main topic being, can a fan base impact a recruitment? How and why? Why or why not? So in the comments, let us know if you think yes, if you think no, whatever your decision is, let us know so we can sit there and talk while we're live. If not, we still might be able to talk afterwards anyway. But with that being said, welcome to the DGD podcast as always, right? The show is brought to you by La Terrain Watches. Use code DGD at checkout and get 10% off your purchase site-wide. Turner, God almighty. Turner, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you for having us. Enjoyed being here last time. So excited to be here again. Obviously, how does a fan base impact recruiting? Topic I'm very, very passionate about.
Listen, we know the Spike Squad. Juan, I think you're familiar with the Spike Squad.
Yes, sir.
I think it's one of the most, I guess you could say, notorious, right, student sections, if you will, in the land. And we're going to talk about that right now from a Spike Squad perspective, from a former player's perspective, and from a fan, just a true fan's perspective. So we're getting 3 tiers here, 3 levels to look at this. So hopefully this gets a good breakdown, right? But first off, I want to talk about, right, like obviously the fan base and what it can mean for a recruitment, right? One, as a former player going through the recruiting process, obviously I think you have to look at a fan base as a part of it. There's obviously more to it, but if you had to choose, or if you had to tell us, like, what percentage of your recruitment was determined by the fan base, if any, what would it be? Like, how big of an impact to you was that?
It was huge. I would say for me, 60%. But for me, I'm a little bit unusual. I was not a very good practice guy, so I was horrible in practice. But when it came to game time, there's something about hearing the band play, hearing that crowd go crazy that just elevates the game so much more. So you could look at a team and say, wow, like, you guys are an unbelievable team. But what people really don't realize is, for Turner and the Spike Squads and the fan bases of the world, like, they are the engines that make that machine move. And it is hugely important. And for a recruit, if you came to the national championship parade and you sat inside that stadium to listen to that crowd roar and go crazy, it would almost be impossible for a recruit to not want to come and be a part of Georgia football.
Well, you heard it from the players' perspective. Turner, what's your answer to the question, my man?
Yeah, coming from the student side of things, these kids, they're coming in to be a student too. So seeing that, just they have obviously the fans there at the games, but the student section, when we go crazy every game, that extends past the game too. We're passionate for the sport outside of the field. We're supporting these players when they're in class or they're going around campus. We're still huge fans of them. So I think just having that consistent support for them, whether they're playing, they're not playing, whether they're starting, whether they're injured, whether they're back up, just that support for them. And going off the past topic with seeing that roar of the crowd is huge. When you come in, obviously you have a lot of teams that are top tier. You might be narrowing it down between a few if you're a recruit. But at the end of the day, if one team is way more fun to go play for because these kids are 16, 17, 18, looking where they want to play, how much fun they're going to have is obviously a huge part of that. And so realizing that one atmosphere may be way more fun to play in definitely plays a role in that.
Now, my question is this, and before I jump to the brigade, have you had, or has the Spike Squad in that regard, had recruits or players physically come up to one of you and say, hey, look, like, y'all played a part in this? Is that a thing, or is that just something that you just do it and hope that it plays out and it works in favor?
I would definitely say mainly the second one. Definitely just kind of, hey, let's hope. But we have had some recruits, like Bear Alexander retweet some of our stuff with asking him to come join UGA, and Michael Williams, his coach, actually was talking about how he woke up on the day of his official visit coming to Georgia, and the first thing that he saw there it is on the screen. He just had I believe it was his homecoming game the night before. He wakes up, is in the chauffeur ride on his way to Athens. And first thing he does, he checks his phone and he sees that we're on game day holding up the signs for him. So seeing some of that work play off, because we're kind of distant from them, not really being able to have personal connection with them, but seeing, a coach come talk about how that did play a role and how that made him really excited to get to Athens, and how Athens was ready for him before he even got there, definitely played a role.
I'll look at it in a sense, right? I think you look at it from a fan's perspective, right? Like, if you can pack Sanford Stadium, right, at 93,000, I look back to the 2019 Notre Dame game, right? Just watching that on TV alone, that right there in itself was downright just infectious, right? Like, it's so wild to think about a night game between the hedges. You've got, you got the Spike Squad in full effect. You've got the lights, as you can see here. Like, if I'm a recruit and I see that, it's just mind-boggling, right? And then you look at guys like, currently, right? Arch Manning. I think Arch Manning was a big deal last year when he came and to the South Carolina game. And then obviously, y'all, the Spike Squad, we want Arch thing. And I think he took notice of that. Can you elaborate, Turner, more on the We Want Arch situation? I think that was a big deal. Just elaborate a little bit further about, the We Want Arch situation.
Yeah, so the picture you have on the screen, that's actually, we like to call it our little brother. So that's Paint Line. They sit one section over from us, but every game they paint a message on their back. So the front will say something like "Go Dogs" or Georgia, and then their back they'll paint a separate message, and that's kind of the message of the week. And so that was a huge thing for them. And then so we're one section to the left of them in this picture, and we had our own sign that we created. Because game day was game day wasn't there, but we had a poster, and we painted "We Want Arch" on the back of that poster with some of our body paint that we had, and held it up, and that got on television, got some screen time as well. So just knowing that he was in the building, we both organizations wanted to, obviously we both want him to come to Georgia, and hopefully pretty soon he'll decide that. But we just wanted to do everything we could to help, maybe sway his decision towards coming to Georgia.
Absolutely. Juan, thinking about this right here, why didn't they ever do a "We Want Juan" sign? Like, did they not paint their bodies at that point, man? Like,
I don't.
What's going on here?
I don't remember that. I don't remember them doing that. But I tell you what, as a recruit, just to see something like that lets them know, man, like, we want you here at Georgia. We want you to be this first choice. And man, oh man, I tell you what, you're going to be, in a situation where for the 3 or 4 years that you're at Georgia, you've got these fans, or you've got the Spike Squad that's going to be just going crazy cheering for you that whole time. It's like, man, why would you not want to go and be a part of something this special? I see Patrick he says, I have a "Let's Go Juan" sign.
I mean, he is the president of the Juan fan club, so it makes complete sense. Turner, so there you actually provided a picture as we pop it here. I think that's you right there, man.
Yeah.
Walk us through this.
Yeah, so this game, I don't know which game that was, but it was our big weekend where we had most of the IMG guys coming up to visit. And so I know I believe this was after the Arch Manning incident, and we saw how much publicity we got from that. So I kind of wanted to carry it through and see if we could carry that through multiple recruits and not just Arch Manning. So I was trying to brainstorm an idea, what recruits are coming, which recruit do we want? And I noticed that it was our IMG weekend. So here you just have a list of all the IMG recruits, and on that Bear Alexander tweet that you posted earlier, I think he may have had either this one or the other one, but on the back. So yeah, the "We Want Bear" sign right there, that's actually the back of this poster that I'm holding up. So obviously Bear, that was our target recruit of the week. and then the front was just kind of all the IMG kids. And if we flip back to the poster. So yeah, right there we've got, let's see, on the left side, 2 of them at UGA. Jonell hopefully is considering UGA. I know we're one of his top schools. Hopefully he ends up here. Kamari Wilson, obviously we lost to Florida, but those next 2 under him are also considering Georgia. So hopefully, next year, if they're on a visit with an IMG visit, we might have a similar sign and try to help pull the trigger on those kids committing to Georgia.
I think that stuff makes a lasting impression. I think it really does, because if a kid comes on a weekend at a game and you see, that love per se, right? Like showing you love, right? It makes you feel wanted. It makes you feel, I would assume from a recruit standpoint, a priority, and it's somewhere where you feel like, okay, these fans are going to love me regardless. Turner, I don't know if you remember when for the national title ceremony, right? The parade and things like that. I don't know if y'all saw that. Juan, I know you were there. You made your TV appearance, and apparently the reporter didn't know who you were. Shame, woman, shame, unfortunately. There was a video that I think Vic Burley posted out with them in the bus and everything. And the initial just awe that you heard, from the recruits at that time, that's an impression, right? When you hear them going, whoa, yo, like I think Jamal, you can hear Jamal and Vic and everybody else were just like, damn, like that matters, right? If you have things like that, it's one of those things that, if I'm a fan trying to put myself into a recruit standpoint, like that shows you your fan base is passionate, right? That's something that I could see myself being a part of. The fans care. They respect the game. They cherish everything. That matters, right? That matters. As we move to the brigade, apparently, Patrick in here was saying that Arch Manning was impressed with the atmosphere in Sanford this past year. No question it affected him. I think so. Here going back to his, the post, right? The post recap, if you will, post the visit or whatever. They had the whole, everything that was said was just like great reviews basically from his time. And then you have AD Mitchell catching the touchdown pass and handing the ball saying, hey, come throw touchdowns to me. Like from the players to the fans, the atmosphere, all of that matters. It just has to matter. Turner, Wanda, any of y'all want to add on to this question and things like that? Anybody?
Well, I definitely want to say I love, Turner, what you guys did. Obviously with those IMG guys. Justin Benton is a big time recruit. He's a legacy guy. I played with his dad. One of the things that's going to be a huge benefit to him, I mean, his dad can say, I never much love to come and play for Georgia. I mean, and we were, mediocre at best during the time that we were there, but to see Georgia coming off of a national championship, as a dad, seeing your son being recruited by your alma mater, but then again having the Spike Squad and you have the Turners of the world that really just pay that much attention to put a sign up that's possibly going to be on TV or even game day, that means a lot. So I do think that we turn Justin Benton. I think that he's going to be a Georgia Bulldog. I really believe, and I know we talked about this on our last podcast, that I really do believe Arch is going to be a Georgia Bulldog. I mean, it's just everything is aligned for him to be here. So I just think that recruiting is great, but to have the Spikes fans and everybody just to be involved, it's not just, hey, we want you here. It's you're going to be a part. And so when you marry the athletics with the academics, with the fan support, and they're all one thing, and they're all a part of just one experience. And so that's basically what you're getting. And I just think that, again, what the Spike Squad is doing is just awesome. It's great to see.
I think we both can attest to that as well. Turner, so I want to turn it over to you. Obviously, you did this past year, right, for Bear and Arch, right? Obviously, with him being the next class over. Are there any maybe drop us here? Are there any plans for any recruits that y'all are doing during the season by chance?
It'll depend on when the visitors list drops. We'll have to see who's coming that weekend. But yeah, in terms of atmosphere, you think about Arch. You come to a Georgia game, you got fans painted on their back. We want Arch. The atmosphere is amazing for the game. Good win. And then somewhere else in the season, you look over at Texas, the other school he's looking at, and you see them lose to Kansas at home, and the crowd was not really in that game. And when you look at that comparison, you're like, man, is this really where I want to go play? Is this Texas team with these fans that, Texas, they've got a passionate fan base, but they don't get into it like we do here in the SEC and like we do in Athens. So I think that could potentially play a big role in where he finally goes.
I mean, it very well could. I'll tell you this. Looking at it right here, obviously, Turner, you were not on for the last episode where we talked about, this past weekend's official visits and things like that. What are your? I want to maybe take this question, Juan, and pose it to Turner. How do you feel about Arch and Justice and these guys? How do you feel about Arch coming to Georgia? Do you think it's Georgia? Do you think it's Texas? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah,
Unbiased, if you can.
Yeah, I think it's Georgia, but we'll have to see how that oil money hits. So hopefully Spice Squad is cooler than, I don't know, the CEO of Exxon, whatever is, helping him get to Texas. But I think with Todd Monken and what we've got with, when you look at Stetson Bennett and you say, look what we did with Stetson, I think that's the main recruiting pitch there. And they are slightly different players, but Todd Monken is saying, hey, I have really good history with past quarterbacks. I personally am a Stetson Bennett supporter. I think he's a great quarterback, but I definitely think they will use that pitch of, hey, look what we did with Stetson. Imagine what we can do with you. So I'm really hoping he ends up at Georgia, and I think he does.
You know what? Hunker down means a completely different thing between Georgia and Texas, don't it? Definitely. Hunker down is one thing for us. Hunker down might mean an oil field for them. So just saying. I'm just saying. So obviously, listen, now that, obviously we've talked about the impact on recruits. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting. How about that, guys? Listen, another big weekend in recruiting, right? I think you look at guys like Jamal Jarrett, right, out of Grimsley. A couple guys canceled their official visits. To me, looking at it right now, I think this weekend is heavily focused on trenches, right? You look at D linemen, they're highlighting it. Offensive linemen with Shams highlighting it. I think this is a big weekend for Coach Scott, for Coach Searles. Coach Searles, it's time to, hey, you're getting offensive linemen in here. Let's get them committed, right? Let's get them committed because it's time that, we have to hit our recruits on an offensive line standpoint, right? This is, in my opinion, a way better class from an offensive line standpoint this year than what it was in the 22 cycle. We have got to hit on that better talent. We've got to get better talent there because there is a very good chance that our entire starting five could be gone. So you have to prepare for that. And I think this class is where we do that. And what are y'all's, what are your takeaways? Well, actually, Jonel Aguero is going to be doing his official and honestly coming off of an unofficial this past weekend. So that, in my opinion, speaks volumes for where Georgia stands with him as well. Juan, I'll start with you first, and then we'll turn it over to Turner. What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
Just like, again, the Jamal, talking about him forever, the Grimsley, and you're what, that's right in your backyard.
It is, yes.
And so, just have him, one of the things that's important, again, when we're looking at trenches, you look at Mims decided he wanted to go and now he's coming back. Obviously, there's something special about that line. There's, special about those trenches that made him decide. I was originally wanting to go back, but there's nothing out there that's going to be better situation that I have right now. And so last I got an opportunity to see him and the other offensive linemen working out in the locker room. In the weight room. They were just, putting it in, and then you just listening to the weight guys and everybody encouraging each other. All the recruits have to really do is just go through and see something like that for them to be like, man, where I want to be. But again, if we can get your boy that you've been filming and talking about for so long, that would be absolutely outstanding for this weekend.
Turner, what are you most looking forward to for this weekend?
Yeah, I think that offensive line, finally getting some offensive linemen, and hopefully we can get either a silent commit or someone will go public with it if Kirby lets them. But I think when you start in the trenches, you get those big boys up front on offense. Now you can recruit quarterbacks as well. You can say, hey, Arch, look at these guys. They'll be protecting you. We got some really good offensive linemen. Same thing with running backs. Hey, running backs, look at these guys you'll be running behind. Look at these guys that'll be moving people in front for you. And then same thing on defense. There's our DBs last year talked about how big of a role our really good front seven played in terms of allowing them to play better. And so I think that if you get some really good D linemen to commit, then that'll help with DBs and say, hey, look, we've got these really good guys up front. That'll help you a little bit. Why don't you come and join them?
Absolutely. One kind of stole my thunder, but it's whatever. As the fanboy here, listen, man, D-line play is going to be key here, right? Whether it's edge, defensive tackle, true nose, things like that. It's time to, in my opinion, it's time to finish the deal, finish the job, right? And I think what better way with honestly and turn a negative into a positive, right? A couple guys lose their, they cancel their officials, right? Making a positive out of this, that's actually more time for the guys that are actually taking their officials, right? That's more one-on-one time. And when you have a guy like Jamal Jarrett, which, draws comparisons to, to Jordan Davis, right? He's 6'6", 350, 360 in that range, right? You have to, you cannot miss. So Coach Scott's, I guarantee you Coach Scott's sitting here ready to go, right? Coach Scott, Coach Uzo, right, for your edge guys. Coach Searles better be ready. I think he will be. And Coach Kirby, man, King Kirby is going to be ready to go too. It's another good weekend. You probably see some all whites again, right? If I'm not mistaken, I want to say every kid wore all whites with the white helmet. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, Turner, what are your thoughts on the all whites? Like, I think it's clean.
I think they're really clean. I'm not too sold on the stripes on the helmet. I think the stripes down the middle, some people really like them. Some people, like me, I personally think it offsets it a little bit. I think if you just take the stripes off and have just the clean whites, they're really good. But I think as Kearis Jackson made the joke that someone said, are we ever going to see these? And Kearis Jackson said, someone said, will these ever see the light? And he said, yeah, the light of the equipment room. I'm pretty sure they only ordered one. And so, I would love to see it in a game, whether Kirby actually pulls the trigger and lets them wear it in the game. I doubt that, but I love seeing it on those visit pictures. And then kind of along with those visit pictures, seeing stuff like the new chair that they have, the arch throne. I thought that was really cool. And then you've got a few other new backdrops that they've added. So it's been really excited to see what the creative team has done over the offseason to make those visit pictures one step higher.
No doubt about that. And my thing is this, though, right? From a recruiting standpoint, guys, can a recruit start a chain reaction of more recruits? Yes or no, Juan?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Again, it's, and notice that, for most of these recruits, they all want to take these recruiting visits together. So it's almost like they're just kind of scheming to say, hey, listen, I want to follow you in this place and see what we like best. But I'm telling you right now, if Arch were to commit right now, today, we're going to have all types of receivers and linemen that are saying, listen, this is where he's going to go. He's something special. They're making a big deal about the number one guy. Let's go follow him. So I think for sure it can definitely start a chain reaction. Also, to say really quick, Turner, you had You had a great idea. I think if you take the stripes off of that and it's just an all white helmet with that G, man, oh man, that's top notch.
I'm kind of a fan of the stripes, to be honest. I get for me, I get the questions about the stripes, right? Because the white stripe in the middle, on the white helmet. But I think the white helmet with the stripes would look better that way rather than say like a silver helmet with the actual red, white, and black stripes. I just don't. I get the stripes as well, but either way, I think the all whites. I think at some point that's got to come out. That's got to be a true thing. It has to be, right?
Yep. And it looks like Patrick and I are going to be signing at Georgia. He told me if I resign, then he's signing. So let's go.
Look at this. Look at this.
My man.
I will say this though, and listen, if say for instance, if Georgia were to land Jamal Jarrett, right? We talked about the chain reaction, right? There could be the possibility that kids can follow suit right there, right? Listen, there's a couple kids that have already sold. I'm already sold on, and they're extremely young bucks. First off, listen, Bryce Davis, that is a grown man. That is an absolute grown man, and he's only a freshman, going to be a sophomore. And then you have Andre Hill, another grown man, going to be a sophomore, and neither have touched their varsity field yet. I'm already sold on them guys. Already sold. But that's neither here nor there. That is a long time before that comes to fruition. However, if you look at if you look at the grand scheme of recruiting, I think, like Turner talked about this IMG pipeline, right? That's a real thing. Talk to Alabama with Thompson, and we'll see what happens there, right? I think Georgia needs to set a pipeline for Buford, right? Juan, that kind of hits home for you.
Yeah.
There's too much talent at Buford to not dig in and create a pipeline of sorts. You know more about Buford and Georgia high school than I do, but I also know that Buford's one of the top D1 pipelines that has the potential for D1 talent in Georgia.
Yeah.
About anywhere in Gwinnett County is going to be that way for what it seems like.
Well, and I'll tell you another thing too. When they just talk about imitation is a form of flattery. Just like the Spike Squad this past year, we had what was called the Wolfgang. They were called Wolfgang 2021. And they were the ones that were dressed up at each and every game. They would go to the away games, home games, but they didn't just do football. It was basketball. My wife coached volleyball, and they were at the volleyball games. But again, that Spike Squad, just kind of inspired something big, especially here in Georgia. And then again, like you said, you're starting to form. All of these high schools now are getting so much into wanting to have this kind of crazy team spirit to say, hey, listen, no matter what the record is, no matter what's going on, we're going to be here. We're going to scream. We're going to be loud, and we're going to let you know that we are just a part of this as you are. So, that I thought that was great this past year.
Nah, I think it's a good thing, right, to have an active fan base, right? To kind of circle back all the way around and come back to the beginning of things. Listen, if I'm a top talent, man, I want to have it. I want to go somewhere, right? Like, especially if it's for 3 or 4 years, I want to make sure that during those 3 or 4 years, I'm getting the best experience I can possibly get, right? Because I'm telling you right now, most college stadiums, especially down in the South, are bigger than any NFL stadium, right? So for instance, when Georgia completely sells out, like a 2019 Notre Dame, where you got 93,000, right? Like, you're never going to get that anymore in the NFL. You're not. So enjoy that while it lasts. Now, at the same time, you can have 100,000 seats, but if you've only got 20,000 filled, that don't mean jack shit. So having a full stadium every single week, week in, week out, regardless of opponent, for that matter, that's when recruits, I'm sure, will take a deep dive and like, okay, so this fan base really cares, right? Like, think about Nebraska. Nebraska has been terrible for recent memory, right? Yet they're always selling out stadiums. They're all like the stands are always full.
You know who else has a crazy fan base that people don't really realize is Kentucky.
Strangely
Kentucky,
enough, yes.
I mean, they can be 2-9, 2-10, whatever it is, and yet their fans are there 100% all the time. Stadium is always filled out, and then of course now as their recent success, they have more and more reasons to be there. But again, they show up as if their team still has a chance to play in the national championship, and so that's great. And especially with the Spike Squad, I mean, we played in the national championship, so you know what that's like. But I think that they have that type of mentality each and every game. Same thing, Texas A&M has the 12th man, and people know about these rabid, crazy fan bases. The loudest that I've ever heard was, when I was at Tennessee at their stadium. I mean, they were obnoxious and they were crazy and they were wild. But that was also, during the times of Peyton Manning, every right and reason to be. So when you add the fan base and you add, again, these types of things, there's so much electricity that actually goes through a player that it just makes you play at a different, higher level. And I really, really feel sorry for that 2020 season when you had all of those ACCs and all those Pac-12 teams that played in empty stadiums. There's nothing worse. And you can ask those players, how bad was that? And they'll tell you it was awful. It was absolutely awful. So to say that the fan base doesn't make a difference, you'd be kidding yourself.
So that leads me to a question for you, Juan. But before I bring this question up, I do want to say, when you look at a fan base, right? Not only is it the home environment that a recruit can sit there. Say, for instance, if a recruit is looking between, I don't know, say Georgia and, I don't know, Tennessee, or Georgia and Vanderbilt for some reason, right? Think about what Georgia fans do at Vanderbilt Stadium or Georgia Tech Stadium. The ability to overwhelm an opponent, hell, even Notre Dame back in 2017, if you remember correctly. The ability to travel when commentators call out how much red there is in a stadium that their main colors are not red at all, that speaks volumes as well. Juan, if from a player's perspective, if you were visiting somewhere, how did you pay attention to that? If there was an overwhelming portion of a fan base, like like an away fan base in the stands, did that catch your eye, or were
No,
you just so
absolutely.
focused?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, obviously the more fans that you have there when plays are made and they're just as loud as that home team stadium, I mean, that's always huge. I remember in 95 playing against Clemson, and we had just as many Georgia fans at that Clemson. You go and catch a pass, score a touchdown, or get an interception or something that happens, and your fan base is just as loud as the next one. That's when the momentum starts to change, and that's when you just kind of overtake a stadium. And the Georgia fans, they'll let you know, hey, we were here. This is basically our place, and I love that about our fans.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the brigade for just a second. Juan, thank you for that input. Rudes asks, Turner, question for the beautiful Spike Squad member. What's your favorite moment where the fans had the biggest impact on a game?
Yeah, so I would say there's two instances of that, and one of them I'm mad at you about. I've been wanting to talk about the away Notre Dame game since you told me the topic of this show, and then I was waiting on it, and then you stole it from me. But I would say that I was at that game. I went with my dad, and that was crazy. It was a close game, and in terms of recruits, Notre Dame powerhouse, they get a bunch of top recruits. We get a bunch of top recruits. A lot of times we're competing over the same ones, and so if you're let's just say that you're deciding between Notre Dame and Ohio State. You go to that Notre Dame game against Georgia. Next thing you know, you're like, man, these Georgia fans are crazy. Maybe I want to go schedule an official visit with Georgia and put them on my list. And so I think that was definitely crazy. Seeing that red takeover, seeing the fourth quarter light show during that game, and it even extended past that game because there was a Cubs game that weekend, and then there was also a Chicago Bears game against the Falcons that weekend. And all 3 games, I was actually in left field for that Cubs game, and we had left field yelling Georgia, right field yelling Bulldogs. And there were some Cubs fans right around us, and they looked back because they saw that we were participating in it, and they're like, "What? Why do y'all have a disagreement with the right field?" Like they thought we were arguing about something. And so like it just shows how crazy these fan bases go. And then same thing at the Falcons game. There's crazy amount of Georgia fans there, but it just made you realize that up north, their fans just don't quite understand what we've got going down here in the South. But in terms of let's see what the question was, favorite moment when the fans had the biggest impact. Definitely that first drive against Arkansas. Being there on the front row was insane. That was the loudest stadium I've ever heard. The sideline, I forgot who the sideline reporter was that game, but she was talking about how it was louder than
Holly
the Penn
Rowe,
State.
if I'm not mistaken, Turner.
Yeah, so she was talking about how it was louder than the whiteout game that Penn State had, and seeing them go, I believe it was 2 false starts and then a sack, and then next play is like a 1-yard pass that gets either gets tackled right at the line or deflected, something like that. But hearing that crowd erupt, especially after that second false start, was insane. And it's crazy to think about how Georgia does their stunts on the defensive line. So that whole week they're practicing, okay, don't move when they shift, don't move when they shift. Then very first plays of the games, they both false start just because of how loud it was for a noon kickoff, especially. I was blown away. I had goosebumps that whole first drive. It was crazy.
You speak of this, I'm going to talk within that same game, though. I think the crowd got louder when Dan blocked the punt for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just on the TV, when Chris Fowler was saying, he was basically making a call out while he was, calling the touchdown, basically made a call out regarding the, the volume in the stadium, right? Like, I don't know what the actual decibels were, but I guarantee you that thing was rocking. And listen, we talk about this right from a Georgia perspective, but you look at other fan bases. Look at LSU on a Louisiana Saturday night, as they call it down there, right down in the bayou after dark. That's a seismic movement at times, and literally, if you don't believe me, it has literally caused an earthquake down there. There was an earthquake game, Juan, if you remember what I'm talking about.
Yep, LSU versus Auburn.
Yep. So, when you look, obviously trying to take the red and black off for just a second, right? And then we're definitely putting it right back on. But when you look at fan bases and how passionate they are, right? Like, Turner talks about going up to Wrigley Field, going up to, and doing a chant there. When you talk college football with it, you bring it with you. People notice that, right? So when you hear the SEC, it just means more. That's a perfect example of that. That's a perfect example. Now reloading. We're going to reload, regroup, and go back to the brigade for a second. Rudes also said that D-line shift was icing on the cake, I guess, talking about generating those false starts. Man, watching that game start off, it could have not been any better. Like, I'm sure, being front row, it was probably a different beast, but you could hear it. If I heard what it sounded like on the TV, I could only fathom what it sounded like right there in the stadium. It had to have been ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it was. I've been to a bunch of exciting games. I was at that Notre Dame home game. I was at the Notre Dame away game. I was at the Rose Bowl, but nothing has. I mean, the energy of that stadium on both the blocked punt and that first drive was nothing like I had ever seen before. It was crazy, and it was one of those things where I actually just took a moment to look around, and I was like, wow, like I'm really front row in this environment right now. I'm a student at this university. This is amazing. And it was kind of like a full circle, like just moment of being proud, being happy, being just stunned by everything going on.
Juan, we're going to turn it over to you. Rudes poses the question, what was Juan's favorite fan moment as a player?
Man, that's a great one. It has to be 1994 when we played Auburn at Auburn, and they were undefeated. Were on a 20-game winning streak, and we didn't win the game. We tied. That was obviously before they were doing the overtimes, but we tied. But I remember I caught a long touchdown pass in the game, and then we came down at they came down at the end, kick a field goal, and they missed. But the way that you look up and you hear the fans just going absolutely insane, it was as if that were our own place. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. And then, running off the field and then having the fans just going absolutely crazy. It still, sends chills, gives me thinking about it. But again, just the fact that, they drove to Auburn. Auburn's undefeated. They were top ranked. I think we were maybe 4-5, something. Our record was not great. I mean, we just, we did not have that much of it didn't seem like we had a lot to play for. But the fact that when they drove and cheered just as loud as if we were playing for a national championship, I tell you what, it was just absolutely amazing.
Rudes brings up a great point when I thought I couldn't love one anymore. Make sure, folks, if you're listening or watching, when you're on social media, Twitter, Instagram, wherever, use the hashtag #OneFanClub to let him know that you let him know. All right, just a subtle reminder. So just a reminder. With that being said, let's see here. Hold on one second. All right. Yeah. So, Turner, while we have you on, I want to ask your thoughts about the SEC real fast. I know this was not something that we had discussed. What are your thoughts about the new scheduling format? There's a potential that you see the 3-6 model. There's talks about a 1-7 model. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see it because I love traveling to away games, especially when you have a fan base like Georgia that takes over most places they go. And as much as I love completely renting out Vanderbilt, I wouldn't be opposed to that not happening every year and maybe being able to travel to a team like A&M or Mississippi State like we're doing next year. And then even going out to teams like LSU, Oklahoma, Texas. Those are really, really fun to go to. So I'm really excited to just get more parity in our schedule and see those teams that we normally wouldn't see. Like A&M, we barely even see A&M. It feels like we're not really even in the same conference with them, and they're just another team like Clemson where we just put them on the schedule to play them. So I'm really excited to see it. I'm pretty confident we'll definitely keep that Florida rivalry, whether it's the 1 game or the 3 game, in terms of how many teams we keep every year. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with teams like Auburn or Tennessee in terms of that rivalry. I think the rivalry will still stay strong, and maybe even every other year can help strengthen that rivalry because the game matters more since you're not playing it as much.
See, that's my thoughts. I think, I think you need to go to a 9-game conference schedule. I think for me, when there's 16 teams, right, being able to do a 3-6 model, and I'm not going to go too far in this because we've done an entire show on this, but when you have that 3-6 model, right, you look at from a Georgia perspective where there's more than just one rivalry that needs preservation. There's a ton of money in the cocktail party every single year. Juan, you know what we're talking about from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me started because I cannot wait for that, by the way. Neither here nor there, though. You also have Deep South Soda's rivalry that has to be preserved, in my opinion, right? If you do the 1-7 model, which one do you keep? That every year. And listen, you also look at other teams like, I don't know, say Tennessee, right? Tennessee and Alabama, or, is it Tennessee, Georgia, whatever, who knows, right? Like Auburn is another one, right? Do you do teams that have multiple rivalries, right? Georgia's one of those. I think the 3-6 covers, multiple facets. I think it allows to preserve current traditional rivalries, the old traditional rivalries, with the potential for generating new rivalries. That third rival or that third permanent game, right? Who's to say that that's South Carolina, right? People wanted to argue Tennessee here, but I'm telling you right now, strangely enough, one, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, please. When you look at Tennessee and Georgia versus South Carolina, every year South Carolina and Georgia play, and I think that's the one that they would gravitate towards keeping every single year. Is that would that is there truth to that statement, or am I misspoke or mistaken?
No, there's definitely truth to that. I mean, there's always going to be those staples that you're going to want each and every year. So for Georgia, it's going to be Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Georgia, Auburn. I mean, with no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But then, like you said, they'll gravitate towards that Georgia, South Carolina as well. So you've got it just depends on how they're going to actually do this. But again, you're going to have to keep those traditions alive. I mean, there's no way that Auburn, Alabama can't play every year. It just is impossible. Or the oldest rivalry with Georgia, Auburn. I mean, so now they're just going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do, especially as they add in these additional teams, right? With the with the Missouris and all that, how that's going to go.
It appears that we have our first dono, $10 from Mr. Rudes towards the DGD podcast and the first proceeds of the One Fan Club. So, with that being said, thank you, sir, for the support. You've got Juan laughing on live show, which is perfect. But nonetheless, I'm telling you right now, if I'm Turner, if I'm a part of the Spike Squad, listen, when you're telling me that as a fan base, the Spike Squad going into Austin, Texas, and dominating, I'm telling you right now, if the Spike Squad hits up Austin, Texas fans gonna hate Georgia. They gonna hate us. Period. They gonna hate us. And that's okay. That's okay, because we ain't here for your sympathy and your love. We here to kick your ass every single week, and we gonna go win a natty. That's what we trying to do. So the Spike Squad going into Texas or going into Kyle Field for that matter, I can't wait for that, by the way. Going to Kyle Field and showing them that the 12th man don't mean a damn thing when you got the Spike Squad coming in. That's must-see TV if you're a dog fan like me. With that being said, though, let's wrap this thing up today. Obviously, there's a lot to be going on this weekend, a lot to cover recruiting-wise, stuff like that. Turner, thanks for coming on again. Listen, I'm going to give you let's do it. Let's do this. Let's talk about Black Out the Bins campaign, countdown to kickoff as well. Tell everybody more about this. If you're not familiar with this, I'm gonna let Turner take it over just a second. Let him explain. Feel free to explain and go ahead.
Yeah, so we're just trying to really hype up that first game against Oregon. We love blacking out both on the field with our uniforms and then also in the fans when we got black all around. So we're really, really trying to push this. Hopefully we can get the fan base behind us and hopefully instead of a sea of red, we're trying to get a sea of black with all of our black shirts out there. And we're trying to get Kirby, we talked about this last episode, maybe with a national title under his belt, he might be a little bit more lenient. He might realize that, uniform color doesn't necessarily mean that your players won't care about the game. So we're really hoping he can just loosen up a little bit and throw those black jerseys out. We wore them for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And I'm really hoping that we can wear them again.
I mean, I'm with you. I think you take a game, Juan, and I'm gonna let you elaborate before we actually wrap up here, because this needs to be talked about here. When you're playing a game like Oregon, when you're playing a game against Oregon, who is known for their color combinations and different variations of their uniform, is this the game where we see Georgia shake things up?
I hope so. I mean, I hope so. However, I always have my little thing about those black jerseys when we played that Alabama and got absolutely thrashed. So I get a little bit nervous with that. But I would hope that they kind of just do something. I mean, you got Oregon here. they're going to have a combination of 150 million, jerseys and pants and all that. But I'd like for it to be something special. I mean, you're playing, your old defensive coordinator. And so in order to get those guys excited, in order to get them fired up, there's nothing like a shakeup with the uniforms.
Yeah, obviously, I don't think this is going to happen, but I'm telling you right now, if logistically Georgia could make this happen, I know, Turner, you're talking about black out the bins, but if the fans black it out and they go all white, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I understand, or all black uniforms with the red helmets. I'm okay with that too. You want a true blackout? That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Just saying. Now, at the same time, we also don't know how can I explain it? We don't know what Oregon's going to come out in, because who knows? They might come out in they may come out like a camouflage neon green, trying to go, hey, make sure you don't shoot us. We're going duck hunting. Dogs are going duck hunting. They might want to, hey, don't get us. Don't mind us. We're, hey, we're here kind of thing. Who knows? Or they might come out in their actual duck uniform, like legitimately like their duck uniform concept, which I'm a fan of. I really am. I thought that was cool shit. But if I'm Georgia, listen, hey, Kirby, black out the bins. It's a thing. Make it happen.
Yeah.
Equipment, switch it up. Just throw all black in there. He will never know. You'll never know. With that being said, though, obviously, listen, black out the bins. Obviously, DGD podcast and Spike Squad partnered up. Countdown to kickoff as well. 85 days until kickoff, as you see on social media every day, doing that countdown for you there. With that being said, have a great rest of your weekend. Juan, have a great weekend. Turner, have a great weekend. The Brigade, each and every one of you, have a great weekend. For those listening and watching, have a great weekend. Make sure to check it out. Obviously, dgpodcast.com. With that being said, though, again, have a great Friday. Have a great rest of your weekend. And we will catch y'all Monday. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Dogs.
And Spike Squad.
And the Spike Squad. Absolutely.